This is the Planetary Potential Podcast for those who are eager to explore entrepreneurship, innovation, and cross-cultural communication in exciting and interesting places around the world. And now, here's your host, Andrew P. Rowan.
Welcome to a special mid-season episode of the Planetary Potential, otherwise known as Episode 10. How do you know when it's time to move on? I'm excited to share this interview with Jaime Sotomayor, country manager of Wayra, Peru, in its entirety. Jaime and I met after hours to discuss his participation in Singularity University, which led to him co-founding a biotech startup in Silicon Valley, and the experiences of raising capital and eventually winding down operations. An important reminder that opinions shared on this episode are those of individual guests. For more information, please visit www.andrewprowan.com/disclosures. We also discuss the origins of Wayra, Peru, how it has developed until today, and what kinds of startups are ideal for continuing the conversation with Wayra, Peru. Most importantly, we cover how Jaime has overcome obstacles as a founder CEO and the ways in which he differentiated himself from his peers. So without further ado, let's jump into it with Jaime. With me is Jaime Sotomayor. He is the country manager of Wayra, Peru. And Wayra is an initiative of Telefónica, which is a telecommunication services provider. We are in Lima, Peru at the Wayra space here, and it is about as innovative as you might expect. It's a semi-open floor plan. There are foldable and movable walls, which can create new spaces, and we are in a conference room. So welcome, Jaime.
Hey, thank you, Andrew, for the opportunity.
So we met a little while ago. I received a brief tour of the space, and we started talking about what differentiates Wayra from other initiatives by other corporates. What really struck me is this network, this global open innovation network that you have here in Latin America, but also it's in Europe as well.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit about how that offering has changed? I know initially you started off as an accelerator,
Sure.
and now you've switched a bit more to CVC. So could you share when the accelerator launched and then when that transition occurred?
Perfect. Well, we're 8 years old. We started back in 2011. We were focused on helping the local ecosystems of entrepreneurship to help them grow. And it started actually in Latin America. The idea started in Lima when the now president of Telefónica was thinking, like, how can we help the entrepreneurs in the country instead of having them leave to hubs like Silicon Valley or Tel Aviv? And that's how the idea of Wayra comes into realization. Actually, Wayra is a Quechua word for wind, because we were looking was this wind that would transform organization or our cities and so on. And that's how we started building these spaces. The first one was in Bogota, and then others started popping up. And it was in less than 6 months, you had all Latin America cities, major cities where Telefónica has a presence.
Right.
They had their hubs. And at that moment, we didn't call them hubs, we called them academies, because we were doing incubation, acceleration programs where we would choose the 10 best startups that apply to the program every year. We would invest in them, help them mature their companies. Some of them came with ideas, others had already MVPs or product already running. And our job was, how can we help them mature and become better companies? Throughout the passing of the years, we've started to identify or focus more that our goal is not only helping entrepreneurs, which is great, but also we have to find what things we're working on can be helpful for Telefónica. So today our investment is not only financial for the returns when we invest in companies, but also there's a strategic return because we're matching Telefónica's needs or opportunities with entrepreneurs that can actually work with Telefónica. And that's what we've done. We've shifted from an accelerator program into a corporate venture capital, which goes from an academy to a hub of open innovation.
So in some ways, the focus has changed, but the value creation potential has increased as well.
Exactly.
Can you explain the primary ways that one of your portfolio companies, for example, can work with Telefonica? You had explained a few previously.
Sure. So what we do is first of all we start by identifying things that Telefonica today can really benefit, because they have either a pain point or there's a huge space for creating a new market or unattended customer needs. And based on that information, we go outside of the corporate, outside of the Telefonica company, and look for startups that are doing innovation, entrepreneurs with amazing ideas, amazing products, and we see which of those can have a potential connection, and we invite them to talk with us. We would introduce them to the right people inside the organization in order to eventually have a commercial agreement with that startup. And it's not a very simple process. It's demanding, but at the end, it's very when it's successful, it can be super powerful for both sides. And we've built a very interesting process to that, so that we can be very efficient with the entrepreneur's time and money, also with Telefonica, with being able to identify the best fit for both sides.
So one of those examples I believe you mentioned was white labeling. So whereby
Yep.
the startup creates a service.
I can give you a few examples
Please.
because there's a few that are focused on finding new ways of generating revenue, for example. So you can partner up with a startup and do revenue sharing. You can offer your existing customer base, which could be, the residential customer, but it can also be the corporate or the small and medium companies. All of them are Telefonica customers, and you can partner up with a startup that has the technology, and you can bundle it into a bigger solution that adds value to your customer. Or you can, as you mentioned, you can white label a solution. So, for example, we want to bring to Telefonica customers something that is not in the market, and the startup has a technology that if they add certain new features to it, we as Telefonica can offer it to our customers. So, for example, in our portfolio, we have a company called Map Salud, and they have an existing technology that helps people better understand their insurance policy. So what Telefonica did is they partnered up with a startup and they built a new version called Benefits. And this is a more premium version of the existing one that is targeted for only Telefonica customers. So now those people that have this app can access to a way new functionalities that the other app doesn't have. And therefore, when Telefonica goes to a customer, they have something that is more competitive than the market.
Yeah, so you're enriching your portfolio of value-added services.
Exactly.
As a telecom.
And then there's other things like, for example, internal use. What we'll call internal use is when Telefonica uses that technology for improving, becoming more efficient, reducing costs, and so on. So if certain software can, for example, robotize, automate, and so on, that generates efficiency for the company that can be valued in the millions of dollars. So those things also we try to bring to the company. Not, as I mentioned, we can generate new revenue, but we can also generate a lot of savings for the company.
Yeah, I think it's quite important that you mentioned that Wyra was conceived as an initiative by the current president of Telefonica, but some years ago. And it's important because there is buy-in from the top leadership to support in that integration process, which sometimes certainly goes less than ideally planned, right?
Sure. Sometimes political changes inside the organization can kill some initiatives or mutate them too much. We're glad that the evolution that WIDA has had over the years, it's not based on political factors. It's more of the ecosystem, what the market demands and what Telefonica demands. And that's why the shift, it's we need to be more, we need to help them more in the strategical side, and the benefits are there. You can measure them. You can pitch it to your board of directors, and they can see, there are results. And what the trend shows is that it's growing. So you need to start putting more effort actually in those initiatives.
So in that sense, do you expect that more interest will come externally from Peru, whereby you have startups or maybe even scale-ups that are interested in coming into the Peruvian market, and they see this soft landing opportunity or this opportunity to partner with Huayra?
Of course, this soft landing, we see it in two different ways. One, helping our existing global portfolio, companies that were invested in Brazil and Chile, Madrid, that they're looking to scale globally. That's why we, as WIDA, we have our saying, we scale startups. So we're helping them grow, and having hubs, 11 hubs, that helps a lot. So we already have several different examples here in Peru of companies that were started abroad that are already working with Telefónica del Peru. The same I can say about other hubs that are doing the same with our portfolio companies. So we're really a global portfolio, and that's with the existing portfolios. But also we're starting to see a lot of attention of international startups, not based in Peru, that want to open up operations in Peru. They're not invested by any other WIDA. And we as WIDA Peru are very interested on working with them, investing in them, because they'll bring value to Telefónica del Peru. And in the future, maybe to other Telefonicas. But today they're interested in the Peruvian operation because of the market or some other factors. So we started already to explore that. We're very close to doing our first, investment by ourselves, WIDA Peru by itself, in a non-Peruvian startup.
Yeah, and can you share where that startup is coming from in the region?
Yeah, it's Colombia. So it's not very far from here.
Yeah.
But it's because they've developed a technology that will have probably more impact in the Peruvian market than in the Colombian market.
And so is that an exception, or does that mean that you're also, as WIDA Peru, willing to work with even startups that come farther away in places like, for example, Southeast Asia or in Africa?
So, I would say that in Latam, it's very common that if you're a startup that is started in Bogota or in Lima or in Santiago, and you really want to be a big company in the future, you need to quickly start expanding regionally. So it's very normal that a Colombian company wants to open up in Peru, or a Peruvian one in Bogota, and so on. And sometimes, and we've done this already, we've even co-invested between 3 or 2 WIDA hubs in the same company because we found potential in our local ecosystem for the same startup. What we are open up, and we haven't done any yet, is going farther from where our footprint is. So I would be very open for Asian companies, African companies, US companies, if their focus is to work with the Peruvian market. I've interviewed several Israeli companies actually in the past that were very interested in working with Telefónica Peru. So what you really need is having the right timing for both of them, because it demands, if you're Israeli company or Asian company, you want to open up in Peru, you really need to have the support or the resources to actually attend the Peruvian market.
Yeah.
At the same time, it has to be something that Telefonica might sees as attractive. So if you find the clear fit, then we can push it, we can help them.
And when would be the right time for an international startup to reach out and initiate the discussion?
So usually in those cases is when the company already has in their plan, they've raised the fund to start in that, to expand to that country. I mean, I wouldn't want to knock on a startup from abroad and tell them, hey, there's an opportunity to work in Peru. And it just, it's just Telefonica. No, it has to be part of your roadmap that you want to enter the Peruvian market. Not only because Telefonica, but because you really are interested in that place. You're going to allocate resources. You'll probably have a country manager that's going to run operations here. There has to be some more than Telefonica.
So basically, even if Wyra and Telefonica were not around, the startup would still be entering the Peruvian market.
Exactly. So the Peruvian government had a program recently. They launched a program recently where they were helping out international companies to come and do a soft landing in Peru.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea was that if you already had in your roadmap the interest of entering Peru, this government initiative will incentivize you to push it up in priority. So if you were between Chile and Peru, this would help you just prioritize Peru over another country. But still, you would need to have that in your roadmap. It's not something that, oh, look, Peru is interested in us. I'll just go and test.
Right. It's good. There needs to be a good fit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in that sense, I know that you also have some experience actually living abroad and executing a startup in the Bay Area.
Mm-hmm.
So you know firsthand the value of having resources locally, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Can you talk a bit about your time in San Francisco? First, how you first moved there, what you were doing, and then how you started your company?
Cool. Yes, so I actually moved to the Bay Area in 2014 when I went to study at Singularity University. I did the GSP, back then called a graduate study program, name that has been changing a bit. But it was super interesting. This 3-month program
That's
was
the summer one, right?
the summer one.
Yeah.
It's the longest one though, but the length was perfect. Like I have a really hard time doing a longer period program because I want to do something tangible, hands on.
Yeah.
And this actually helped every single participant to actually build a company while studying. So not to get into much detail about Singularity, because the format has been changing a lot.
Right.
But in my program, it was 5 to 6 week of intense content. You were feeding so much information because it would keep bringing speakers from different fields, technologies, and stuff. And you were just absorbing all this knowledge. And then the 4 last weeks, it was about building something that would impact positively the life of 1 billion people. So I had a very high aspirational mission behind it. So
it's safe to say your mindset had changed from day 1 to day 90.
Oh my God, it was a pivotal moment for my career, definitely, because the mindset that I had before leaving Peru was very local, limited. Even though I was doing, already startups back then here in Peru and traveled abroad to different events and so on, still, like, you were thinking too small. And just Silicon Valley has this thing of thinking crazy and big, and Singularity just is like that times 10, exponentially.
Yeah.
And so while you were doing the program, one of the things that just kept feeding my mind is like, you can actually do anything. Most of innovation comes from outside the actual field. So why can it not come from me? So my co-founders and I, we stumble upon, biotechnology as something that the 3 of us shared in common. So one of my co-founders, his background is software, and he was all into biotechnology, specifically genetic engineering, and he kept talking to me about bacteria and how if you reprogram them, it's just like changing software code and so on. it was super interesting. His view that I got really caught into his idea, and I thought, this is amazing. Why there's no more people doing it? And he's like, okay, because access is just not there. It hasn't been democratized yet. So I told him, no, I think I found my partner for our project. Do you want to join together? And so the two of us started the company. Well, not the company yet, but the idea
On
of
the
working
team.
together, the
Yeah.
team, and then a third member joined in. And as soon as the program ended, we decided that we really wanted to take this from just an idea to an actual startup. And then is when we added a fourth member. You know, you needed the scientist after all, you know. And the four of us, we did a really awesome team.
We'll be right back after this. Hey, Andrew here. First, if you're enjoying this episode, then please take the time to leave a review or a rating or share it on social media. I'm also available via email if you have some feedback that you would like to share. Thank you. And we're back. So let's pick up where we left off.
Where were the other co-founders from?
So two of them, which were my colleagues in Singularity, they were based in Brazil. They're Brazilians. One is just genius programmer, self-taught. The other one was also genius in digital fabrication. Again, also self-taught. He's built all his own equipment. He's built his own equipment. And then the fourth co-founder, or my other co-founder, the scientist, he is a PhD in biotechnology and in specifically engineering and genetic engineering. So, and he's from Colombia, but based in Sao Paulo, where he did part of his studies and worked at a lab. So the four of us sort of ventured and said, you know, do we really want to do this? And we left everything and moved to the valley and start, you know, fundraising and building our company. It was what you would read in books, but without a happy ending.
Well, in the end, you got experience, right?
I know, yeah. I would say that it was like a quick MBA, startup MBA or something like that, you know?
So in the beginning, you had a lot of momentum, right? You were just coming off the tail end of the GSP, and then
You know what's funny about when you finish the GSP, they actually tell you to go back to your country for at least a month and think about it. Like, go back, settle, all that adrenaline of the program, let it dissipate, go back to reality. And if you're still passionate about doing it, like, do it. And then you see like a lot of projects die, which they should have, and others that continue. And ours was the one that, you know, continued.
So you came back to Peru.
Yeah.
You were here.
They went back to Brazil. We were still only the three starting ones. Not the three starting one.
In contact, I'm assuming. Constant communication.
And we were, it's like, what should we do? Blah, blah, blah. And then one day it's like, guys, I'm meeting you in Sao Paulo. Wait for me. We need that fourth co-founder. Have that guy sit there when I arrive.
Yeah.
And then one of my co-founders, he said, I have the right guy. Well, I'll invite them. I'll invite him.
Yeah.
We interviewed him. For me, it was like an immediate click. And we're like, okay, let's start applying to Accelerator. And we got into IndieBio gladly. And we all moved. And it was the first time that I would, you know, stay for a very long period. I was there for 2 years, you know, really pushing this for 2 years. Two of my co-founders, I've met them only for 3 months, if you want to put some time to that. And one of them, I barely knew him. He was like the new guy in the team. And he left his job to join us. It was amazing. Like, he was, from the four of us, he was the boldest of all of us.
Wow. So when you were here in Peru for that month, that was, I'm guessing September, October?
Yeah.
So at that point, because you have the seasons reversed, it's like spring here, right?
It was spring, yeah.
What was the reaction from your family and friends at that time? Because you're coming back with this completely transformed mindset, right?
Yeah.
And then, you know, I'm sure they'd ask you, hey, how was it? What's going on? What are your plans? and you're like, you don't understand, or like what was like, you can't get it.
Yeah, it's so all that initial resistance, I had it before going to Singularity, when I was, starting my own startups here in Peru.
Yeah.
Yeah, my family would really understand what I was trying to do.
Uh,
They didn't understand the concept of startup, and I would say, like, in Peru, the concept of startup wasn't really that well known until most recently. Just like a side note, one of my first ideas that I had for a startup, or second one, I applied it to the first year of WIDA. I competed and almost got into to the final 10 slot. Good thing I didn't do. It would have changed it completely, the outcome. But going back to the initial story, so it was back in those moments where I had the bigger resistance of my family and friends, and you know, it's that mocking that you get from people that you have to just take it because they have no idea what you were doing, and they think you're just playing around. What changed my parents' perspective actually was, while I was in GSP, I actually told them it wouldn't be nice if you can come and visit us, visit the program, just sit in class, listen, which everyone can do that, you know. So my parents said, okay, let's organize our family trip to be in that, specific week, and it's Peruvian holidays, our Independence Day.
Right.
We'll just go over there.
End of July.
Yeah, end of July. And so they did that. They went 1 week. They sat in class like a couple of days to listen. The other days they went to Napa. But those 2 days that they were sitting in the campus, they were just mind blown. They were amazed because of the quality of the knowledge of the people, what we were doing, and that's the moment where everything changed for them.
But you should also mention, where is the campus?
Oh well, yeah. Campus is the location is just bizarre. So it's Mountain View next to Google campus. You got the NASA Ames Research Center, which is divided in two sites. There's one part where is the very no limit access, very secure area where you need special permits and screening to get in, and then you have the more relaxed area where you have offices and residential area for those people that are working with something related to NASA's mission. And Singularity University was sponsor or co-creator or somehow helped by NASA and Google, so it made a lot of sense having them in that space. Yeah. So you're in the NASA campus. It's weird, it's different, and while we were there, we wouldn't leave the space that often. We would just stay in the campus. Yeah. So we felt like we were in this prison camp for a while, but it was just amazing having the huge hangars. Yeah. Just walking around, biking around the hangars. It's just unreal view.
So then for your folks, it was a case of seeing is believing.
Exactly. That they needed something that was not. It's not me telling my parents my point of view. It's like getting this straight from the source. Listening to Peter Diamandis speak. Yeah. Seeing other projects. Being in the campus where things were happening. That changed completely their mindset, and they went from disbelief, even though they fully supported anything that I did. That's, at the end of the day, I'm still their kid, Sure. But after that, they were very supportive. Anything that I would have needed, they would have gladly helped. And then everything changed from then. So friends, though, that's a different story. I still was like this, strange bug that nobody could figure out what he was doing. Do you don't have like a day job, a 9 to 6 job. You're not in a why are you not working in a bank? Why are you not doing like stuff that we do?
Traditional career.
Why are you not in a consulting company?
But during this time, you did receive external recognition for what you were doing. You were recognized by the MIT Technology Review for innovators under 35, right? So, I mean, couldn't this have been just something that you point to people who, didn't get it or
Yeah. I mean, so what they recognized was, a Peruvian doing something in innovation. We were, if I'm not mistaken, we were 5 Peruvians, back then, in that year, 2015, that got recognized for this. And we were all working on something that I think many Peruvians would be proud knowing another Peruvian was doing this, even though it was not being done in Peruvian country. It was done by a Peruvian. And it was related to what our startup Arcturus BioCloud was doing. And in our goal to democratize biotechnology using automation, robotics, software to give access to more people to do genetic engineering, something that we believe will open a range of new opportunities from medicine to food to health and so on. Um,
So looking back now, because this is 4 years from today, 4 years ago from today, can you see exactly like where things started going the wrong way?
in the company,
Yes,
right?
I mean, I
Yeah.
assume it's certainly more clear than having lived it at the moment.
It's clear. Sometimes it's very hard to say if I would have done this or that, would have it made much of a difference. It's painful looking backwards because it's with hard times to endure, and especially having to accept, that you failed on something. It's not something that you really want to put in your CV or so on, but you have to be able to confront it. I would say that we were trying to tackle a problem that was not either well defined or big enough to be attractive for someone to invest. The mission, though, was something that most investors were like, I'm completely with you.
Yeah.
It's just how, where's your traction? We were having a really hard time making this a business that was not all about the mission, but also you can have numbers that can show the traction. So we were jumping back and forward, left and right, finding, damn, who is our audience? Who is our customer?
Yeah.
So back again, you can argue, you didn't stick too long in one specific customer, or the other way around, you stick too much time in one while you needed to test many more variables, and that actually was the conversation or the discussion that we had almost every day. One co-founder would say, we need more data to say that we should shift to another customer. Or my other co-founder would say, no, we need to run multiple testings to see who should be our customer. But you don't have, abundant money to do that. So there was always this sort of conversation that till today, I wouldn't know what's the correct answer. Was it timing? I don't know. Was it founder dynamics? I don't know. But at the end of the day, it's like you ran out of money. That's the end of the story.
So what was that conversation like when you decided to, I assume, jointly disband and dissolve everything?
So it was a decision that you didn't have much choice. You start with a little bit of capital you get from your first investor, and then you keep doing your job and everything's cool, and then you start seeing how your bank account reaches weird levels of I need money, and then you raise again, but you don't fully end up raising the full amount you needed, so you start becoming more, I would say, creative with the ways how, okay, now we need to change our model based on the amount of money we have, which is wrong. You had an idea, you you needed this amount of money, you didn't raise it, and therefore you either had to choose to keep doing it, or change to fit with the amount of money we had. And I think maybe we did wrong, and we said, okay, we only have this amount of money, let's change our strategy. And in that change of strategy, what actually was happening is that we were dying slowly. That's the sad story, is that while we were thinking we were doing was pivoting, like trying to live, we were actually dying slowly until we ran out of money. And so we had to start cutting back our expenses, no salaries. Basically, at one point, my 3 co-founders were back in their home country because we couldn't afford San Francisco. And then one moment, I couldn't even support living in San Francisco, and I had to come back to Lima. And then you're forced to change completely to a hardware software solution to a 100% software solution, and you have to become creative. And then you notice that you're at the end. So at that point, you just have to be real and say, is it worth, trying to put our money, like find money from nowhere and put it again to see if if to keep dying slowly, or just kill it and call it quits and say, maybe it was not the right time, maybe it was not the right idea, or so on.
Around what time was this when you had moved back from San Francisco to Peru?
So it was late 2016.
Late 2016.
We were 2 years in the company. So we started right at the end of Singularity in 2014, at 2 years after that. And it was the point where I was already back here and thinking, okay, let's give it a few more months of almost no budget to see if things revert, and things just didn't.
What about that network that you had established from the GSP? How helpful were they post-program? And I'm sure like you must have been in contact with them at certain times, either for some successful points or when things weren't going the way that you expected them to, reaching out to them for feedback or as a sounding board.
So the network of Singularity played a very good role, important role, not only because of my cohort, but because of previous cohorts. Also, the mentors in the network helped a lot. So for getting into, first of all, to get into IndieBio, it's not easy. It was the first batch of IndieBio. All other companies that were chosen for the program were either based in the US, Canada, or UK. All of the founders went to known universities, Imperial College in London, or the Toronto University, and places where you knew that you had high quality scientists. We were the outsiders. We were for America,
pioneers.
Pioneers, yeah. But if you were an investor in SF and you have this 4 Latinos from Universidad de Lima, Universidad de Sao Paulo, it's like, I have no idea about them. It's what validation do they have? And Singularity was something that gave us that validation. We were not no ones anymore. We were people that went through the program that now IndieBio can reach out and ask anyone from Singularity that they might know, and like, who's these guys? So that helped a lot. Then from my cohort, there were a few that had some contacts in the biotech space, but especially in other cohorts, there were people that already had done startups in the past in biotech. A few of them had very successful companies, which we could meet them and ask for help. We even, at a moment, were trying to see if we can service their company and so on. So it helped a lot, especially when you went to industry events and everyone was a completely new face. When you saw those biotech graduates from Singularity, you reach them you just stick to them the whole event, and anyone they greet, you ask them to
Introduce.
So it was really good for networking a lot. And
Are you still in touch with your co-founders?
I am very in touch with my co-founders. We, I mean, with a few of them, we'll speak maybe, I don't know, 3 times a year. With a few of them, probably every month or so. All of them have gone to do different, things.
Yeah.
But we're still in contact. And I would say that besides Singularity, going through an accelerator, especially if you're not local,
Mm-hmm.
helped a lot. That soft landing that IndieBio gave us, I think it was the most valuable thing because they put us in the map. Like when anyone in the Bay Area was thinking about startups in biotech, they can just go and reach this pool of companies that IndieBio is it's accelerating. So the mentors, the network, everything, it helped give us more network and validation from just some random biotech startup from four Latinos.
Yeah. So can you talk a bit about, I guess, that perceived skepticism that it sounds like you felt from VCs in the Bay Area, and I guess also if you're looking at your peers in these other programs, you're saying pretty much they all come from well-known institutions, which can then serve as validation or as signaling, right? Can you talk a bit about what that experience was like, especially because I imagine you were the only Peruvian in many of these situations. You had 3 co-founders who were all Brazilian, right?
Well, 2 Brazilians and 1 Colombian.
That's right.
Yeah.
2 Brazilians and 1 Colombian. So I guess your fellow Colombian co-founder might have felt quite similar. Are you two the closest of the co-founders that you mentioned?
Actually, yes. I think, I mean, I don't know if because it's the language or Peru and Colombia are very similar, but we really bonded very well. And at the end, when things were going a bit south, we were the last ones to leave because I was the CEO and he was the science guy. So we really needed the two of us to be physically in the country where we were gonna deliver the bacteria, while our other co-founders were one of them was software, so he could be abroad. But bringing back to the how we were perceived, just picture this: you're in a demo day or some event where you're pitching, and before you have other entrepreneurs, and when they're in the team slide, you see all the badges, Stanford, MIT, Columbia, and Georgetown, and so on. And I'm like, I cannot put those logos. Like nobody knows where Universidad de Lima is, even though it's in the name. It's like, what's that? So yeah, we're not that. You're not playing in the same field, same leagues, but you're competing for the same VC money. So you have to become different, and we tried different ways. So even in a way how we were presenting, even on the way how you would dress up for the occasion. I even wore a bow tie, so any event that I went, at the end they would remember, oh, I want to talk to the guy with the bow tie, because nobody wore bow ties. We even did like a really hilarious video while in Singularity, because every team had to create their own video, and you had actual producers and teams that the Singularity would hire to do this video. So it was not like a homemade thing. It was there was some production behind it. And the typical inspirational one with a lot of clips from stock photos, we didn't really want to do that. So we were kind of the rebels in the program, and we said, no, let's do like let's create our version of the Dollar Shave Club.
Okay.
I don't know if you've seen that video, but for those listening and haven't, it's hilarious. And we decided, hey, we can use the same concept, but bring it into the biotech scene. So you see me and my teammate, my co-founders, like walking around the space and knocking on cardboard, and you can see Frankenstein and crazy inventors and so on. And I was wearing the bow tie, and that sort of led that everywhere I went is like, oh, I know you, I know you. So it was trying to position yourself in this space.
Is that video available online still?
It's still there. So if you YouTube Arcturus Bioclad, you'll see me being
In a bow tie.
In a bow tie. And every reproduction, I'll be embarrassed. I'll feel it. Yeah.
But you try to differentiate yourself in creative ways. It sounds
Yeah.
basically. Do you feel that any investors in the Bay Area underestimated you, even when you were pitching to them, because you didn't have?
No, I mean, at the end, every single meeting I had with VCs, at least my perception was they all treated me amazing. They all took the time to listen 100% my pitch, my deck. If they didn't invest in me, I don't think it was because of my Latin background or because I'm Latino or anything. No, I mean, they're focused on, is this a big, big market? Do you really understand what you're doing? The potential. I think that I probably was over, or I was thinking that maybe they looked to me different because I was Latino. So I think it's more of a thing that I was believing that they were not believing.
Huh.
They were not. I mean, it always helps that you come from Stanford. I don't want to say it doesn't,
Yeah.
but they were really focused on what are you bringing to the table more than where you're from. Because at the end of the day, you are incorporated in the United States. You are running your company from United States. That's what matters for them because they're investing in their area. Unless you're a global investor, most of them were focused on investing only in Bay Area.
Yeah, so you came back here to Peru in late 2016, tried to keep the company going.
Yeah, even try to have customers in Peru, but that didn't work out either. Yeah.
And so then finally decided to pull the plug on everything. And then what was that like? Because on one hand,
It was, and I'll add, it was a hard decision because I even had a few very close friends that were willing to put some extra money, and that decision was even harder because there was a little bit of money, but it was just not enough, and it was too little to actually fill the round. It was not even half of the round. So you would be cheating yourself and those people that believe in you, taking that money to continue dying slowly. You see? So it was even harder.
yeah, I imagine it must have been even more difficult here in Peru than in a place like the Bay Area where failure is kind of celebrated. It's expected. And
What I have like this in between position because celebrating failure incentivizes more people to fail on purpose. But what I like about there is that they tolerate. They're like, okay, it's a failure if you did all the things right, or you tried to do all the things right. It's you've learned a lot. You can tell a lot about the character of the person, of the team, and another investor will be willing to stake again or in your next venture, knowing that in your previous endeavor you actually did the most that you could, like the best you could. The worst thing you could do is that you were scrappy, you didn't use the money wisely, and then nobody's going to invest in you again, even if your idea is amazing. In our case, for example, our first investor, Sean O'Sullivan from IndieBio, he when we told him that we were closing the company, he wrote us a beautiful email. It was long, very well thought. I know that probably he's written that for several other companies that also he had to do write-offs. But in that moment, I felt, I know this is written for us, and it was a very well written email saying that he's been through the struggle in the past. He understands how hard it is. He knows that we as the founders have put more risk and time into it than what
Sure.
he's done, and that he will always be open to invest in the next idea, next venture will come knocking to his door. And that is something that back then I would have thought any, Peruvian investor or traditional investor would never say. Like, you made me lose money. But, you were taking a risk. It could have been 10x, 100x, but it didn't work out.
Yeah.
But you should feel satisfied knowing that, at least those founders did 100%. Like, they lived. And I keep telling people about my anecdotes where I lived in SF, and SF, and it's super expensive. So I had to, rent a room and live with other people that I didn't even knew back then. We would share a 6 person bedroom because you had to tight your budget.
Yeah.
So we did the hard way. We tried. So
yeah. So the only thing I would say about failure is and I agree with you. I mean, it shouldn't necessarily be celebrated, but of course, taking smart risks is something that should be encouraged. Otherwise, there would be no entrepreneurs.
Exactly.
But also, in the case of making mistakes, don't make the same mistakes. Make different mistakes.
True.
I want to know, looking back on those 2 years that you spent in San Francisco, what's one of the best memories that you have of that time? Because it sounds like you were really deeply into the slog of startup life.
Yeah.
And so wondering, if you had maybe some bright spots along the way that you look back on fondly today.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that I have a really lousy memory, but for these things, they stuck with you. And a few of them are, for example, the first investment we had from IndieBio.
Yeah.
For us was like amazing. Like it was my first time raising money from a VC in the United States. We've been like following them, tracking them down, like meeting every single partner in that accelerator, either virtually through a Skype conference or just stalking them at conferences and so on, and reaching out to each of them. It's like, hey, I'm having for actors. We were doing this. Hi. And I clearly remember like the last meeting we had in their offices in the place where they were building the accelerator program, sitting in the ground because there was no chairs yet. It was just they were beginning, and just going over the idea and so on and the potential. And the moment they just look at each other and they're like, we're 2 out of 3 of the people that have to take the decision. We got 2 more slots. The 2 of us agree. 2 out of 3. Okay, guys, you're in. And just, play it cool, Jaime. Play it cool. We leave the building, and my co-founders and I were like, oh my God, we did it. We now have funding and so on. And it's silly because it was like from 100K,
Yeah.
not a big thing, in Silicon Valley. But going from 0 to 100K, going through an accelerated, that was a high moment.
Yeah. Someone believed in you enough to trust you with 100,000.
And it was amazing. That sensation. And then you have the opposite when you're like almost reaching nothing, and then you finally have someone again that believes in you and gives you more hope and so on. That was great as well. And I don't know, it just I never got tired of going and pitching this to potential customers and potential investors, and just every day waking up and doing this. Like, even though there were moments that it was just hard, like I was so invested in the idea, in the company, and pushing it. We would, as normal, fight between co-founders all the time. And there was moments where I was like so stressed because of the tension that it's like, why I'm doing this. But then again, you're next day you wake up and you're like pushing it. I don't know. It was a roller coaster of emotions.
So
You miss it.
how valuable were those experiences in helping you in your day-to-day responsibilities today at Wyra Peru?
Perfect. That's a great question. I think that that 2 year was like an intensive program to understand better people, the startup ecosystem, and so on. Because in very short amount of time, I understood better all this thing. For one is like understanding your co-founders. We all have egos. How to deal with those things. Knowing how to respect everyone's domain, being able to have your own opinion, but at the end of the day, being able to accept that the one who was assigned the responsibility for that domain is the last one to take the decision was very useful for today in our role. Like in my team, we have, even though I'm the country manager, I don't take the last decisions. I don't like being that sort of role. I've hired or assigned the responsibility to someone in the team. If one is in charge of the portfolio, the other one is in charge of doing business development, the other one doing partnerships. They have to make the last call, and I'll be there to support that, challenge it, have my opinion, but they have to do that, and I'll respect their decision. Those are the sort of things that you end up having with your co-founders because you're all equals. I like to have that situation the same here in the office with a team of Wyra. Then regarding
very flat organization.
Which is super hard to replicate in a bigger organization where it's super hierarchical, and everybody's like waiting for the top-down decision. While I like the bottom-up version, which is very common in a startup. But then, and then in another aspect, like my experience raising capital, running a startup, all the lessons learned by my own experience, by watching other startups in my cohort or friends, helped a lot to advise, mentor, guide the startup that I've invested, which the startup that I'm helping out. And I'm glad when I see that they've already like overpassed the knowledge that I can hand out to them, because they've managed to raise way bigger amounts of money, managed to create way bigger companies, hire a lot of more people that I could ever manage back then. But it helped me, have a solid knowledge of this, startup ecosystem, and bring that to Peru, where I would say it was still very nascent.
Yeah, and it seems very early stage here in Peru, which of course is an opportunity and a challenge.
Yeah, and that think big global mindset that the startups in Silicon Valley have. That's the one that I've tried to sort of share with our portfolio here in Peru. Thinking, Peru is just for at least for me, first step to sort of validate your business, get some traction, and then that help you raise some fund to start growing. And at the end, Peru becomes probably a smaller operation once you start growing in other countries that are bigger, just because the country is bigger.
Yeah, certainly. I can sense that kind of global mindset, not just based on your experiences that you've shared, but also with how the whole Wyra program is set up, these different open innovation hubs around the world.
We'll be right back. Hey, Andrew here, and this is the last interruption, I promise. But I would like your input. Why? Because I need to figure out where season 2 or 3 should be in the world. So if you have any ideas about where I should record the next season, or if you know some folks who would be good interviewees for a potential future season, then please reach out to me. The best way to send a suggestion is to send an email to me at andrewprowan.com, and I will review and reply. Thanks so much for listening. And now let's head back to the interview.
As we draw to a close, I'd like to give you an opportunity to share something that I haven't asked you. For example, do you want to talk about something that I haven't asked you yet? It can be about you, Huayra, Peru. It can be about Peru or Lima, your time in SF, or if you'd like to share something, for example, the best advice that you've ever received. It's completely open-ended.
Sure. Well, one of the things that I would love everyone to know is that we're as an open innovation space, we're open to work with companies, startups that could benefit from working with Telefonica. As I mentioned before, there's so many different ways we can do it. Even though we're a telco company, doesn't mean that we only are in infrastructure technologies. We're way broader than that because we're serving the mining, the agriculture, the medical, educational sectors. We can work with those different industry startups, the same as because we have a big base of customers in residential customers. We can also add a lot of value there.
Yeah,
we're very open to what we can do, and if you're from abroad, my doors are always open to help you get into the Peruvian ecosystem, because we have the network of contacts. We can help you connect with Telefonica. We have the space. We've been doing this for a while already, and so think of Huayra, Peru as a nice soft landing if you want to start your operations in Peru. That, as in the me selling Huayra part for startups. In a more personal startup advice, when people say think big and ambitious, like don't underestimate it. Like you can always aspire even bigger than that. We're seeing now that things were possible to actually aim higher. I think Rappi is like a really good example of the region that a Colombian company can grow to this amazing size and be a inspiration for other companies in the region. That they can now they have a someone or a company they can look at and say, oh, I mean, if they could do it, why can't we do it? And I think that we're going to start seeing this sort of companies pop up more in the future, because now you've shattered that myth or that invisible mirror, invisible window, that you as Latino couldn't aspire to become, even compete with an American company or your European company or an Asian company. So I don't know. Closing advice is like aspire globally, like big. You can really compete globally.
Yeah, that's such a key message, that there's talent everywhere, right? And don't think that you're not good enough to compete with other companies.
And even if you're thinking about competing competing for talent in the Valley, you have way more competition for talent than in Latin America. Like you have Google and Facebook and all the big companies competing for the same talent. Prices are just insane, absurd. And you can find really good talent, the same good talent in Latin America, for a way better salary, and really vested in what the startup does. A lot of people that work at this big tech companies, they want the big paycheck, they want the fun, they want the space, all those benefits. Here you can actually find talent that also shares the vision and the mission of the company.
Yeah, that's such an important distinction to make. On that note, Jaime, many thanks for sharing your experience in San Francisco,
My
but
pleasure.
also for explaining a bit about how Wyra is set up, and of course, what's unique about Wyra Peru here. Really appreciated your time, and it sounds like there might be an opportunity for you to do another startup in the future. So certainly be.
I always leave the door open. You know, once you've done one, you have you have the you remember all the emotions, the excitement of doing it. You know, and the possibility to actually be the you know the be in the role, the first the leading role. You know, when you're the entrepreneur, you're leading.
Yeah.
But you also you have the hard times that you remember, and it's managing that those two emotions. And if you find or if I find in the near future something that I feel that is nobody's doing, and I feel that I can actually be the one to do it, I wouldn't hesitate to do it. Today, that sensation, I felt it in Peru, where I saw a wida that could definitely benefit from what I give them.
Yeah.
And I love what I do.
Yeah, your passion certainly came through in the conversation, and thank you for sharing your insights, Jaime. It was a pleasure. Until next time, take care.
Thank you very much.
This was another one of my favorite episodes during the season. Right before Jaime and I met, I used Grin, an e-scooter, to travel to the Telefonica Foundation offices, about 4 kilometers away from where I was, and out of the official geographic range of where you can bring an e-scooter in Lima. I didn't realize it at the time, but when I did, Jaime was kind enough to help me bring the e-scooter back within range, and then we grabbed a late dinner at La Lucha, one of Lima's famous chains. Thanks so much for your help, Jaime. More recently, I had the pleasure of seeing Jaime in New York City when he was visiting for the Association for Private Capital Investment in Latin America, or LAVCA Summit, held during the same week as the United Nations General Assembly. Needless to say, I'm looking forward to the next time Jaime and I meet. It's hard to believe that we're halfway through season 1, so thank you for joining us along the way. We'll be back to our regular format next week.